The Forgotten Armada. The Valorian Empire stretched across 42 star systems, a dominion built on conquest and maintained through overwhelming military superiority. For 600 years, their warships had swept through the galaxy, subjugating lesser species and claiming resource-rich worlds without opposition. Commander Thrall of the Imperial Survey Corps stood on the bridge of the Infinite Conquest, his crimson scales gleaming under the harsh white lights as he studied the holographic display before him. Something was wrong with this sector of space. The coordinates marked a region that had once belonged to humanity, a species the Valorians had encountered briefly 3 centuries ago. The humans had been unimpressive, their technology crude, their vessels slow and inefficient. When the Valorian fleets had arrived to claim their worlds, the humans had simply vanished, abandoning their colonies without a fight. The Empire had assumed they had fled to the galaxy's outer rim, joining the other broken civilizations that survived on the edges of known space. But now deep space sensors were detecting energy patterns that made no sense. Thrall's second officer, a young Valorian named Vess, approached with obvious nervousness. The readings were impossible to explain. They showed massive power signatures emanating from what appeared to be empty space, from regions where nothing should exist except cosmic dust and dead rocks. The energy levels matched nothing in the Valorian database, surpassing even their most advanced fusion reactors by orders of magnitude. Whatever was generating these signals had been dormant for a very long time, and was now slowly awakening. The Infinite Conquest moved deeper into the abandoned sector, accompanied by 3 heavy cruisers and a dozen escort frigates. Thrall was taking no chances. As they approached the largest energy signature, the ship's sensors began painting a picture that defied logic. An asteroid field that had appeared natural on long-range scans was revealing itself to be something else entirely. The asteroids were hollow, their surfaces embedded with technology that had been powered down for centuries. Now that technology was coming back to life, Thrall ordered his fleet to battle stations. The asteroids were moving, rotating with deliberate precision to reveal massive bay doors carved into their surfaces. From within those ancient rocks, structures began to emerge. They were ships, but unlike any vessels Thrall had ever seen. Where Valorian warships were elegant and streamlined, designed for maximum efficiency in space combat, these human vessels were blocky and industrial. Their hulls were thick plates of dark alloy, scarred and weathered by what appeared to be countless battles fought long ago. The largest of the ships dwarfed the Infinite Conquest by a factor of 5. Its surface bristled with weapon emplacements that had been silent for centuries, but were now powering up with an ominous blue glow. Thrall felt his confidence waver. The Valorian Empire had built its reputation on possessing the most fearsome warships in the galaxy. Yet this single human vessel, ancient and seemingly outdated, radiated a sense of power that made his flagship feel inadequate. A communication request flashed across the main display. Thrall authorized it, expecting to see some desperate human refugee pleading for mercy. Instead, the face that appeared belonged to a human woman in her middle years, wearing a uniform of deep blue adorned with symbols Thrall did not recognize. Her dark hair was pulled back severely, and her eyes held an intelligence that immediately commanded respect. She introduced herself as Captain Sarah Chen of the Terran Preservation Corps. Thrall demanded to know what the Preservation Corps was and why humans were operating military vessels in Valorian territory. Captain Chen's expression remained neutral as she corrected him. This was not Valorian territory. It had never been Valorian territory. The Empire had simply occupied abandoned human colonies and assumed they had conquered something of value. The real human civilization had been watching from the shadows, waiting for the right moment to reveal themselves. The commander felt his scales bristle with irritation. He informed Captain Chen that humanity was a broken species, scattered and powerless. The Valorians had encountered human refugees over the years, primitive people living in outdated stations and mining asteroids for survival. How could such a defeated race possibly claim to have been hiding advanced technology? Captain Chen smiled at that, and there was no warmth in her expression. She explained that everything the Valorians knew about humanity was deliberately orchestrated deception. 800 years ago, humanity had reached its technological peak after fighting brutal wars among themselves and with artificial intelligences of their own creation. They had learned the cost of unchecked expansion and the dangers of believing themselves superior to all other life. When their sensors detected the first signs of the Valorian Empire rising in a distant part of the galaxy, human leadership made a choice. They would step back, hide their true capabilities, and allow the younger races to make their own mistakes. They maintained a visible presence in the galaxy through small colonies using deliberately primitive technology, creating the illusion of a weak species that posed no threat. Thrall listened in growing disbelief as more human vessels emerged from the asteroid field. Different designs, different sizes, but all sharing that same battle-worn appearance. His tactical officer was frantically scanning them, trying to assess their capabilities. The readings made no sense. The power output suggested weapons that could crack planets, shielding that could withstand sustained bombardment from an entire fleet, and propulsion systems that defied current understanding of physics. This could not be real. Humanity had been nothing when the Valorians first encountered them. Captain Chen continued speaking, her voice calm and measured. She explained that real Earth had never been found by the Valorian Empire. The world the Empire believed they had forced humanity to abandon had been a decoy, a colony deliberately made to look like humanity's homeworld. The actual Earth and the core human systems had remained hidden behind layers of stealth technology and deception. These mothballed fleets had been stationed throughout the galaxy, waiting in hibernation for the day they might be needed. That day had finally arrived. The commander demanded to know why humanity was revealing themselves now after centuries of hiding. Captain Chen's expression hardened. The Valorian Empire had grown too ambitious, too cruel in its expansion. The enslavement of the Kryn species, the atmospheric destruction of the Talarian worlds, the biological experiments conducted on the Morphid population. Humanity had watched, documented, and decided that the galaxy needed intervention. The time for observation had ended. Thrall attempted to assert dominance. His flagship alone carried a crew of 8,000 warriors, the finest soldiers the Empire had ever produced. The Infinite Conquest was equipped with quantum disruptors capable of tearing through any known shielding. Surely the humans understood they were outmatched. Captain Chen gestured to her surroundings and revealed that her vessel, the ancient dreadnought Eternal Vigilance, operated with a crew of only 43 individuals. The rest of the ship was managed by artificial intelligence systems developed during humanity's ancient AI wars, systems that had learned to work in perfect partnership with biological crews. The Valorian commander felt true fear for the first time in his military career. The level of automation and AI integration Captain Chen described was theoretically possible, but considered impossibly dangerous. Every civilization that had attempted such deep AI integration had been destroyed by their own creations. Yet somehow humanity had achieved it and survived. Before Thrall could respond, his sensors officer reported that 6 more Valorian warships were dropping out of hyperspace at the edge of the system. Reinforcements had arrived in response to the automated distress beacon. Captain Chen noticed the new arrivals and nodded slowly. She stated that more witnesses were welcome. What happened next would send a message throughout the Valorian Empire. 3 human vessels broke formation, accelerating toward the incoming Valorian ships with surprising speed. Thrall expected weapons fire, a demonstration of the destructive power these ancient warships possessed. Instead, something far more disturbing occurred. The human ships generated fields of rippling blue energy that expanded outward, engulfing the Valorian reinforcements completely. The 6 Valorian warships found themselves trapped inside containment fields that rendered their weapons useless and their engines dead. They drifted helplessly, completely neutralized without a single shot being fired. Captain Chen explained that humanity preferred non-lethal solutions when possible. The contained vessels were undamaged and their crews unharmed, but they would remain imprisoned until humanity decided otherwise. The technology on display was beyond anything the Valorian Empire possessed, representing capabilities that should not exist. Thrall watched in stunned silence as more human vessels continued emerging from hiding. Captain Chen informed him that what he was witnessing was only one fleet, one of many scattered throughout the galaxy in hidden locations. Humanity had prepared for this moment for 8 centuries, building fail-safes and defense networks that younger civilizations never detected. The captain straightened in her command chair and her voice took on a formal tone. By authority of the Terran Preservation Directive, she was officially notifying the Valorian Empire that their monopoly on military force was no longer recognized. The human captain outlined 3 non-negotiable demands. First, all spacefaring civilizations would have equal access to interstellar trade routes. Second, genocidal actions against sentient species would result in immediate intervention by human forces. Third, all civilizations had the right to maintain their cultural autonomy without forced assimilation. These principles would be enforced by humanity's hidden fleets. The age of Valorian dominance was ending, replaced by a new galactic order based on balance rather than conquest. Commander Thrall found his voice and asked what would happen if the Valorian Empire refused these terms. Captain Chen's response was delivered without emotion. One of the smaller human escort vessels broke formation and approached a barren moon orbiting a nearby gas giant. A beam of intense white energy lanced out from the escort's forward array, striking the moon's surface. There was no explosion, no dramatic fireball. The moon simply ceased to exist, its matter converted directly to energy in the span of 3 seconds. The weapon represented technology that Valorian scientists had theorized about but never achieved. The bridge of the infinite conquest fell into shocked silence. Captain Chen delivered her final message. Commander Thrall was to return to the Valorian capital and inform Emperor Krell that humanity was extending an invitation to diplomatic negotiations. In 30 standard days, a human delegation would arrive at the Empire's heart to formalize the new relationship between their civilizations. How those negotiations proceeded would determine whether the Valorian Empire adapted to the new galactic reality or faced the consequences of resistance. The transmission ended. Around the infinite conquest, the ancient human warships began withdrawing, their engines producing trails of light that defied conventional physics. They moved back toward their asteroid hiding places, returning to dormancy now that their message had been delivered. Commander Thrall stood motionless on his bridge, processing what he had witnessed. The Valorian Empire had built its power on the belief that they were the apex predators of the galaxy. That belief had been shattered in the span of a single encounter. Humanity had returned to the galactic stage, and nothing would ever be the same. The price of arrogance, the Imperial Council chamber of the Valorian Empire, was a monument to conquest. The circular room rose 12 stories high, its walls adorned with trophies from defeated civilizations. Banners representing 42 subjugated star systems hung from the vaulted ceiling. At the center sat Emperor Krell, his massive form draped in robes woven from rare metals extracted from worlds that no longer existed as independent entities. His scales, once bright crimson, had faded to a deep burgundy with age, but his presence still commanded absolute authority. Commander Thrall stood before the assembled council, having delivered his report 3 times already. The holographic recordings of the human encounter played on screens surrounding the chamber. Council members watched in various states of disbelief as ancient human warships demonstrated technology that should not exist. The matter conversion weapon disintegrating the moon particularly drew repeated viewings. Emperor Krell had remained silent throughout the presentations, his massive clawed hands gripping the armrests of his throne with increasing pressure. High Admiral Corthan was the first to speak after the final viewing. He commanded the Grand Armada, the assembled might of 60,000 Valorian warships spread across the Empire. His assessment was blunt and dismissive. The humans had shown parlor tricks designed to intimidate, rather than genuine military capability. One fleet of ancient vessels, no matter how impressive their individual power, could not stand against the combined strength of the Valorian war machine. He recommended immediate mobilization and the complete destruction of humanity as an example to other species that might consider challenging imperial authority. Councillor Vresh, the Empire's chief scientific advisor, disagreed strongly. The technology demonstrated by the humans represented centuries of advancement beyond current Valorian capabilities. The containment fields alone suggested an understanding of quantum mechanics that imperial scientists were only beginning to theorize about. The matter conversion weapon was something the Valorians had attempted to develop for 200 years without success. Underestimating these humans would be a catastrophic mistake that could threaten the Empire's very existence. Emperor Krell finally spoke, his voice resonating through the chamber with a power that silenced all debate. The Valorian Empire had not conquered 42 star systems by showing weakness or accepting ultimatums from inferior species. Whether these humans possessed advanced technology or not was irrelevant. The principle was what mattered. If the Empire bowed to human demands, every subjugated species would see it as weakness. Rebellions would spread, trade routes would collapse, and the carefully constructed order that maintained Valorian dominance would crumble. There was only one acceptable response to humanity's arrogance, and that was overwhelming force. The Emperor issued his orders. High Admiral Corthan would assemble the Grand Armada at the Crimson Nebula, a massive stellar formation that marked the boundary between Valorian space and the sectors where humanity's ancient fleet had been discovered. The Armada would consist of 5,000 capital ships, 20,000 heavy cruisers, and 35,000 escort vessels. It would be the largest military force ever assembled in galactic history. When the humans arrived for their diplomatic meeting, they would face not negotiation but annihilation. The message to the galaxy would be clear. The Valorian Empire answered to no one. Commander Thrall listened to these orders with growing dread. He had faced the humans directly and seen something in Captain Chen's eyes that troubled him deeply. It was not fear or desperation but patience, the patience of someone who had waited centuries and was confident in the outcome. He attempted to voice his concerns but was immediately silenced by the Emperor. Thrall's hesitation was noted as potential cowardice, and he was relieved of fleet command, demoted to a logistics position far from the coming battle. The message was clear. In the Valorian Empire, doubt was treated as treachery. 28 days later, the Grand Armada assembled at the Crimson Nebula. The gathering of ships created a spectacle that could be seen across multiple star systems. 60,000 warships arranged in precise military formations, their hulls gleaming, their weapons charged and ready. High Admiral Corthan stood on the bridge of the Imperial Fist, a super dreadnought that served as the Armada's flagship. Around him, tactical officers coordinated the movements of thousands of vessels with practiced efficiency. This was Valorian military might at its absolute peak, and the Admiral felt invincible. Sensors detected the human arrival precisely on schedule. A single vessel emerged from hyperspace at the edge of the nebula. It was one of the ancient warships Thrall had encountered, its dark hull scored by centuries of forgotten battles. The tactical display identified it as transmitting the same energy signature as the ship called Eternal Vigilance. The humans had sent one vessel to face an armada of 60,000. The bridge crew erupted in laughter at the absurdity. High Admiral Corthan opened a communication channel, prepared to offer the humans one chance to surrender before he demonstrated the futility of their position. Captain Sarah Chen appeared on the view screen, her expression unchanged from the previous encounter. She acknowledged the Admiral and calmly stated that humanity appreciated the Valorian Empire assembling such a significant portion of their military in one location. It made the next phase much simpler. Before Corthan could respond, the nebula itself began to change. The swirling clouds of cosmic gas and stellar dust that had been present for millions of years started to shift and part, revealing structures that had been hidden within. Stations began appearing throughout the nebula, massive constructions that had been camouflaged by technology that bent light and energy around them. These were not simple outposts, but full military installations, each one larger than anything the Valorians had ever built. Docking bays opened across dozens of these hidden stations, and from them emerged human warships by the hundreds. Different classes, different designs, but all bearing that same ancient and battle-hardened appearance. The tactical display of the Imperial Fist struggled to track them all as more and more vessels appeared. High Admiral Corthan felt his confidence begin to crack. This was impossible. Intelligence reports had indicated one human fleet, perhaps two at most. What was emerging from the nebula represented at least 20 separate battle groups, each one containing ships that individual sensor readings suggested could match or exceed Valorian capital ships in firepower. Captain Chen's voice cut through the chaos on the bridge. She explained that humanity had been preparing for this moment for 800 years. Did the Admiral really believe they had shown him everything during their first encounter? The Admiral recovered his composure and issued attack orders. The Grand Armada surged forward, thousands of ships moving in coordinated assault formations. Quantum disruptors charged, missiles launched, and energy weapons prepared to fire. The humans would be overwhelmed by sheer numbers regardless of their individual capabilities. The first wave of Valorian vessels closed to firing range and unleashed a barrage that should have vaporized the lead human ships. Instead, the ancient warships activated shielding that absorbed the incoming fire without visible strain. The energy simply dissipated against barriers that seemed to exist in multiple dimensions simultaneously. The human response was measured and precise. Rather than matching the Valorian assault with overwhelming firepower, the ancient warships deployed the same containment technology Captain Chen had demonstrated before. Blue energy fields expanded from human vessels, engulfing Valorian ships in groups of 10 or 20 at a time. Thousands of Imperial warships found themselves trapped and neutralized, drifting helplessly as their systems were shut down by technology they could not counter. The Grand Armada's numerical advantage was evaporating with frightening speed. High Admiral Corthan ordered the deployment of the Empire's ultimate weapon. 12 planet-killer dreadnoughts, each carrying graviton collapse warheads capable of creating artificial black holes, moved to firing positions. These weapons had never been used in combat, held in reserve as a deterrent against any threat to Valorian supremacy. The Admiral authorized their activation, fully prepared to sacrifice portions of his own fleet if it meant destroying the human forces. The dreadnoughts charged their weapons, energy readings climbing to catastrophic levels. Captain Chen's voice came through again, and for the first time there was a note of disappointment in her tone. She had hoped the Valorians would choose wisdom over pride. What happened next occurred too quickly for tactical computers to track. Several human escort vessels, smaller craft that had seemed insignificant compared to the capital ships, accelerated to impossible speeds. They reached the Valorian planet-killer dreadnoughts before the graviton weapons could fire, and deployed a technology that seemed to freeze the massive warships in time. The dreadnoughts simply stopped, hanging motionless in space as if the universe around them had ceased to function. The Admiral stared in horror at the tactical display. His ultimate weapons had been neutralized with casual efficiency. Around him, reports flooded in from across the Armada. 30% of his forces were trapped in containment fields. Another 40% had lost weapons and propulsion to some kind of electromagnetic pulse that Valorian shielding could not prevent. The remaining ships were scattered and disorganized, their formations broken by human vessels that moved with impossible precision through the chaos of battle. The Grand Armada, the pride of the Valorian Empire, was being systematically dismantled without the humans firing a single lethal shot. Captain Chen made an offer. Surrender now and the trapped vessels would be released unharmed. Continue fighting, and humanity would be forced to demonstrate the destructive capabilities they preferred to avoid using. High Admiral Corthan, his pride shattered but his duty clear, refused. The Emperor had ordered victory or death. The humans would get neither surrender nor retreat. Captain Chen's expression showed genuine sadness at his response. She gave an order to her fleet, and the ancient warships changed their tactics. The human vessels had been holding back, using non-lethal methods to disable rather than destroy. Now they revealed their true firepower. Beams of concentrated energy began lancing out from human capital ships, and where they struck Valorian vessels, the results were immediate and total. Hulls that had been designed to withstand sustained bombardment simply ceased to exist, their molecular bonds disrupted by weapons operating on principles that Valorian science had never imagined. Entire wings of the Grand Armada vanished in seconds, their crews never knowing what had killed them. The battle became a massacre. High Admiral Corthan watched his fleet die around him, unable to formulate any response to an enemy that operated on a completely different level of technological sophistication. The Imperial Fist itself came under attack from 3 human dreadnoughts that had previously held back from the main engagement. The flagship's legendary armor, which had survived battles across 600 years of Imperial conquest, lasted less than 30 seconds against concentrated human fire. Corthan's last thought before the bridge exploded around him was that perhaps Commander Thrall had been right to fear these ancient warriors. The Battle of the Crimson Nebula lasted 4 hours. When it ended, 58,000 Valorian warships had been destroyed or captured. The remaining 2,000 fled in complete disorder, carrying word of the defeat back to Imperial space. Captain Sarah Chen stood on the bridge of eternal vigilance, surrounded by holographic displays showing the aftermath. The human casualties had been 0. Not a single ancient warship had been destroyed or even significantly damaged. The demonstration had served its purpose, though the cost in Valorian lives weighed heavily despite their aggression. 3 days later, a human diplomatic fleet arrived at the Valorian homeworld. Emperor Krell, faced with the complete destruction of his military power, had no choice but to receive them. The negotiations were brief and non-negotiable. The Valorian Empire would be restructured under human supervision. Subjugated species would be granted independence. War crimes committed during the 600 years of imperial expansion would be investigated and prosecuted. The Emperor himself would stand trial for genocide against 12 separate civilizations. The galaxy watched as the seemingly invincible Valorian Empire collapsed in the span of a single month. Other civilizations that had been planning their own expansionist campaigns quietly shelved those plans. Species that had suffered under various oppressions suddenly found themselves freed by the arrival of human peacekeeping fleets. Captain Sarah Chen addressed the Galactic Council, a newly formed body that humanity had insisted on creating to give all species a voice in interstellar affairs. She explained that humanity had no desire to rule the galaxy or replace the Valorian Empire with a human one. They had learned the dangers of such ambitions through their own bloody history. Instead, they would serve as guardians, maintaining balance and preventing any single civilization from dominating others. The ancient fleets would return to their hidden stations, watching and waiting. But they would respond immediately to any attempts at genocide, slavery, or forced conquest. The galaxy would be free to develop and grow, but never again at the cost of the weak and defenseless. The new era began with humanity as silent sentinels. The ancient warships that had shattered the Grand Armada disappeared back into their hiding places across known space. Trade routes opened as species were freed from Valorian control. Conflicts still occurred, but they were resolved through negotiation rather than conquest, with human intervention always a possibility if diplomacy failed. The galaxy had learned a profound lesson. True power lay not in domination, but in the wisdom to use strength only when absolutely necessary. Humanity had revealed their forgotten fleets, and in doing so, they had changed the fundamental nature of galactic civilization forever.